Good morning, America. This is the Cats Roundtable. John Catsimatidis here. Sunday morning. What's going on in America? What's going on in Washington? And we go around different states, and today we have the junior senator from Arkansas, Senator Tom Cotton. Good morning, Senator. How are you this Sunday morning?
Good morning, John. It's good to be back on with you again.
It's been interesting times in Washington. So many things happening. And I understand you put out a press release a few days ago about the death penalty. Almost about the same time, the Department of Justice has made a decision that the death penalty should be reintroduced, and they've announced 5 people that are going to be held accountable to it, I guess. What say you?
John, I commend Attorney General Barr very strongly for signing the death warrants for these 5 death row inmates. All 5 of them committed heinous murders, to include the murder of a child. In fact, the very first person to be put to death later this year murdered 3 Arkansans, including an 8-year-old girl only about 20 miles up the road from where I grew up, by incapacitating them with a stun gun, duct taping plastic bags over their heads, and dumping them in the bayou, all in the course of a home robbery. Now, the death penalty has been on the books for decades, John. The Obama administration simply had a de facto moratorium, even as they sought the death penalty in certain high-profile cases, like the Boston Marathon bombing or the African-American church shooting in South Carolina. So I commend Attorney General Barr for carrying out the law as it is written, and as a jury of peers found these men guilty of the most heinous kinds of crimes. I'd say I was pretty astonished that pretty much every Democratic candidate for president and the squad and every other liberal in the Congress immediately came out not only in opposition to these death penalties, but for abolishing the death penalty, something that is massively unpopular in our country, and I can't imagine will help them next year in the election.
Well, I guess, I guess the biggest item on the death penalty was we have to be absolutely sure they are guilty. And I think some of the things that some of the Northerners had said at one time, that if there's a possibility they were innocent, that I guess it shouldn't happen. What say you on that?
So, John, it is vital that every American accused of a crime get due process and have a chance to challenge the evidence against them in a court of law and be judged by a jury of their peers, and then have an orderly and timely appeals process. But at least in the Arkansas case, John, there's no issue of the inmate's guilt. He doesn't even challenge the fact that he was responsible for these heinous murders. When that's the case, and the appeals process has run its course on legal technicalities, and a jury of his peers has sentenced him to death for the gruesome murder of an 8-year-old girl and her parents, then it is time to carry out justice.
One of the other items that you feel very strongly about is immigration and the attack on our borders. Tell all America how you feel about that.
John, what we see on our southern border is truly a crisis right now. It's not the kind of illegal immigration that most Americans are used to, which is mostly young men coming to our country to work illegally. Now, this immigration surge has come from families or adults with children purporting to be families, because they know that due to well-intentioned laws and bad court decisions, they are apt to get released into our country if they show up on our border, and they claim asylum from persecution. But here's the thing, John, they are not fleeing persecution. They are fleeing things like crime or poverty, and I feel badly for that. And we can do more to help countries like Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala battle poverty and battle crime. But that's a decades-long solution. And those are not valid grounds for asylum under our asylum laws. Asylum is there for people who face religious persecution, like the Jews in the Soviet Union, or Christians in Syria or China, or people who are being persecuted because of their sex or their political beliefs. We shouldn't tolerate abuse of our asylum laws at the border. The administration is doing everything they can. Attorney General Barr just last week issued a new opinion that would tighten down somewhat on bogus claims of asylum. But ultimately, we need the Democrats in Congress to act and to recognize that we can't admit every person who shows up on our border, because They claim asylum, but what they really want is a job that pays a little bit more, or they just want to enjoy our standard of living.
The Mexicans this week have said that they have reduced the immigration problem by 39%. Did you hear anything like that?
So the immigration flows across our southern border have slowed in recent months, John. The last couple of months they've slowed. I hope that's a result of the policies the Trump administration has pursued, in particular the diplomacy, hard-nosed but effective diplomacy with Mexico and Guatemala to get those countries to deploy more of their troops to our borders and to also acknowledge that they are a safe country for these asylum claimants to process their asylum claims in those countries rather than trying to get into our country. Now, it's possible that the reduction in illegal border crossings and asylum claims is largely the result of the summer heat. You typically see a decline in June, July, August. So we'll have to wait a little bit longer to see. But I hope and I suspect that a lot of it has to do with the hard-nosed diplomacy the administration has pursued.
I agree with you 100% that we should have Guatemala and Mexico solve the problem, or 90% of the problem, before it becomes our problem at the U.S. borders. You're a freshman senator in Washington. The problem with the Justice Department, the FBI, were you shocked?
Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty disappointed at some of the senior leaders in the Department of Justice and the FBI in the late Obama years, John. This is not, the agents that are out working hard on the street in New York or the tri-state area in Arkansas, trying to catch child pornographers and drug traffickers. But at the highest reaches of the Department of Justice and FBI, it's pretty clear now that they had, a very strong antipathy towards Donald Trump. And they put their thumb on the scale. They misused law enforcement resources. And then even after the election, they tried to impugn the integrity of the election and impugn the Trump campaign. Look, you can disagree with Donald Trump. You don't have to vote for him. You don't have to support his policies. But that's different from saying his election was illegitimate or that he somehow conspired with Russian intelligence. Now we have 2 years, $35 million, top-notch federal investigators and prosecutors that looked at this every which way to Sunday, and they found that there was no collusion with the Russian intelligence services, yet the Democrats still can't give up the game. I mean, they have just recently reached a majority of their caucus in the House of Representatives that are in favor of impeachment of Donald Trump, apparently for the sin and the crime of being Donald Trump. And we're only 15 months away from an election, John. These people should just get a grip.
Be patient.
And come to their senses.
Yes. Now, Mueller, it was very embarrassing. He didn't have a clue. I mean, who was the true orchestra leader on putting all these forces together? It was the State Department involved. It was the CIA involved. It was the FBI involved. Who was the orchestra leader, in your opinion?
Well, John, I do have to say that it seemed like the person who learned the most about the Mueller report from the Mueller hearings was Bob Mueller. He obviously did not have a grasp of the facts and the details. It's one reason why he probably wanted one of his deputies to testify alongside of him at the last minute. And it does raise questions about who really was leading the show inside of the special counsel's office. I think we'll know that pretty soon. The Inspector General at the Department of Justice is conducting a review of the origins of the investigation, as is the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut, John Durham, who Attorney General Barr appointed to review this matter. It probably would have been inside the FBI, the Department of Justice, the CIA, which you mentioned. For the most part, does not operate on American soil or conduct law enforcement operations. But I suspect that those reports from the IG are coming out very soon. And from John Durham, I hope as soon as possible, consistent with the facts in his investigative process, because we need to get to the bottom of this. And we need to make sure nothing like this happens again in the future.
Many Americans, all Americans, feel that we have to get down to the bottom of it. And do you think, I've heard opinions that this will go down in history as a possible attempted coup on Washington. You have that opinion?
It is. I think it's beyond dispute, John, that there were certain high-ranking officials in the Obama administration in 2016 and early 2017 who bent the rules, who broke the processes, and who went out of their way to put a thumb on the scale of the election for Hillary Clinton, and then after the election to try to delegitimize Donald Trump's election and his inauguration as president. I don't see how you can look at some of those text messages or the conduct of Jim Comey or Andrew McCabe, the director and deputy director of the FBI, and think otherwise.
Senator Tom Cotton, we got a minute left. What do you want to tell the American people?
I want to say, John, to the American people, to all of your listeners, we are going into a highly consequential election. The Democrats have truly lost their mind. If you watched those debates last week, they want to take away your health insurance. They want to abolish the death penalty. They want to decriminalize crossing our border illegally. They don't want to deport anyone other than serious violent felons. And they want to use your taxpayer dollars to provide them all health care. This is truly a debate and an election about whether America will be a socialist nation. I don't think Americans want to be a socialist nation, but it will be incumbent upon all Americans to get out and make their voice heard in this election.
Senator Tom Cotton, thank you for what you do for America, and we'll catch up with you again real soon.
Thank you, John.
This is the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back.